I will describe in detail the 31st verse of Chapter 1, Pratopadesh, Rasmarana, of Rasaratnakara Rasayankhand. So, if you're ready, let's jump right in.
To really wrap our heads around the incredible mechanisms at play here, we're taking a deep dive into a truly monumental treatise in Indian classical alchemy, a field known as Rasa Shastra. We're looking at a metallurgical and pharmaceutical protocol that is, quite frankly, mind-blowing. It bridges this huge gap between hardcore physical chemistry and the deep, spiritual, tantric goals of bodily immortality or Jivan Mukti. Now, verse 31 doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It sits right smack in the middle of a continuous protocol, specifically the second method of mercury processing that starts back at verse 29. These surrounding verses lay the absolute foundation for what modern science would actually call a solid-state chemical synthesis. We're talking about systematically binding volatile, toxic elements into a safe, bioavailable therapeutic compound. Pretty wild, right? Which brings us to our first main topic, ancient alchemical substances demystified. Before any of the critical thermal processing can even begin, the text lays down a super specific list of major substances. Let's break these down. We start with Shuddha Suttam. This is highly purified mercury, classically categorized as a Maharasa. It's a liquid heavy metal and literally the foundational essence of our compound. Then you mix it in exactly equal parts with Svarnam or gold. Gold is a dhatu, a solid noble metal, and it acts as the primary therapeutic payload here. This 1-to-1 ratio is what kicks off the entire amalgamation process. Next up, we add Gandhakam, which is sulfur. Now, sulfur plays a massive alchemical role. It's the taming agent. It essentially converts that volatile liquid mercury into a completely stable, non-toxic mercuric sulfide. After that, we mix in tungkan, or borax, acting as a powerful mineral flux to lower melting points and help everything bond uniformly. Then comes hardrika, everyday turmeric, which serves as an organic chelating agent and antioxidant. The text also mentions strip pushpa. Now, historically, this one is heavily debated, but it's generally understood to be a highly specific botanical or mineral catalyst used strictly to trigger the chemical reaction. And finally, we have rambapatra, the slightly acidic, astringent liquid sap of the banana plant. This is our vital medium for maceration, used to break down those tough metallic bonds. Okay, moving right along to part 2, historical instruments, specifically the yantras. To process these incredibly potent elements, you need specialized gear. Enter the Kalva Yantra. This is a heavy-duty, ancient piece of engineered equipment, basically a heavy stone or iron mortar and pestle. You use it for rigorous, continuous mechanical grinding to break down the metals and bind them with those acidic plant juices. But it's not just a tool. In a tantric and philosophical context, the Kalva Yantra holds deep symbolism. It represents the cosmic womb, the foundational earth element, where raw, chaotic energies are tamed. And here is where it gets really cool. Modern science completely backs this up. If you look at modern reviews on mechanochemistry, specifically high-energy ball milling, they show that the sheer friction generated in this process forces solid-state chemical reactions right at the nanoscale. It literally alters the atomic structure of the heavy metals without even needing a drop of external heat. Next, we have the Valuka Yantra, which is the absolute crucial thermal technology mentioned in our target verse. It's an ancient sand bath apparatus. The way it works is you seal your medicinal mixture inside a glass flask or a clay crucible known as a kupi or musha. You then bury this vessel directly in the center of a large container packed with sand. Why sand? Because it's a brilliant thermal insulator. Ancient practitioners could actually measure heat gradients just by observing the temperature of the sand at different depths. This gave them sustained, beautifully regulated indirect heating. That's absolutely critical, because if you expose this volatile mercury mixture to a direct open flame, it would instantly vaporize the medicine and create some massive toxicological risks. Nobody wants that. Let's transition into part 3, the step-by-step preparation mechanism. Let's actually deconstruct this whole procedure before we hit the final heating stage. It all starts with preparing the mortar, making sure the Kalva Yantra is perfectly clean. Then you begin the intensive grinding of those exact equal parts of liquid mercury and solid gold. This intense friction causes a solid-state realignment, physically forcing the metals to merge on a molecular level. Once that's done, we move into the joint bonding phase, systematically working in the precise measurements of sulfur, borax, and turmeric. And the visual result here is striking. The shiny, silvery, liquid nature of the mercury completely vanishes. It's replaced by this dense, unified, dark paste that practitioners call kajali or peshti. The physical presence of the original substances has fundamentally shifted, and from a toxicology standpoint, the raw mercury has been successfully neutralized.
All of this prep brings us precisely to the original Sanskrit text of the 31st verse, which dictates the transition from grinding to heating. The Roman transliteration reads, Stripushpana tu tat sarvam mardied rambhadra vaidinam, dinante golakam klithva, valuka yantragam pachet. Let's break down the shabdartha, or the word-by-word meaning, so we know exactly what's happening. Stripushpana means with the flower of Stripushpa. Tu means and or then. Tatsarvam is all of that mixture. Mardiate means should be vigorously ground. Rambhadravai is with the juice of the banana plant. Dinam means for a whole day. Dinante is at the end of the day. Golakam means a sphere or ball. Klithva means having made. Valuka yantragam means placed in the sand bath apparatus. And finally, pache means should be cooked. So the anvai, the logical syntax, is wonderfully direct. It essentially translates to grind all these ingredients together with strupushpa and banana plant juice for a full day. At the end of the day, form it into a ball and cook it in a sandbath apparatus. The bhavartha, or the deeper essence of the verse, is all about the absolute necessity of that continuous wet grinding to ensure the botanical properties deeply infuse into the metallic matrix. Focusing in on this step-by-step mechanism, the verse is incredibly strict. It commands dinam margiet, intense, non-stop grinding for an entire day using rambhadav as the solvent. Then, once the particles are saturated and the moisture finally evaporates, the text says, dinante golakam kridva, create a solid sphere. Now, philosophically, this ball formation has a profound tantric purpose. The sphere represents the bindu, the ultimate point of concentrated cosmic energy and perfection. But practically, from a pharmaceutical perspective, this physical shape is flawlessly engineered. Forming a perfect sphere ensures absolutely uniform heat distribution once you drop it into the furnace. It guarantees you won't get any cold spots or uneven chemical conversion during that crucial phase shift. And that perfectly sets up part 4, thermal put and Agni rituals.
Now let's look at the timeline for these Agni or fire rituals. At the end of day 1, that prepared sphere is enclosed in a musha, which is a specialized crucible forged from highly specific fire-resistant clay and tightly sealed with mud-smeared cloth. The whole purpose of encapsulating it in the musha is to create a high-pressure, oxygen-deprived environment. This is absolutely essential for sublimation and molecular recombination. Then, the thermal technology rules dictate mandagina, which means slow fire cooking for the entire second day. If we cross-reference this with other major texts, like the Rasayankhand Tantra in Avbodh 5, verse 16, and the Ayurveda Prakasha in chapter 1, verses 153 to 156, we see this exact same protocol strictly mandated. Low sustained heat is legally required across these texts to ensure the volatile active principles don't escape, effectively locking in all that therapeutic potency. Days 3 to 5 then involve extracting it, powdering it, adding more sulfur, and cooking it again in a garbha yantra for 3 continuous days.
But here's an absolutely crucial, unstated rule in this whole process. Swang shiti. This is the classical principle that the heated apparatus and the medicine inside must be allowed to cool down entirely naturally, on their own. The historical belief was that forcing it to cool quickly would ruin the medicine. And guess what? Modern scientific evidence in crystallography and nanotechnology beautifully confirms this so-called unproven claim. Swang shiti is effectively ancient annealing. By letting the apparatus cool slowly over several days, the atoms are given the time they need to settle into their most stable, biocompatible crystal lattice. Modern pharmaceutical science verifies that if you rapidly cool metallic nanoparticles, you get severe structural instability, which could inadvertently retain the metal's toxicity.
Once the cooling is complete, the process culminates in the final extraction and intense grinding of the material into a superfine powder, or virchoniat. The new substance produced is a highly potent, complex bhasma, a calcined medicinal ash, often used in legendary formulations like Maharajavai. Because of its extreme potency, it targets severe conditions like chronic immune disorders and advanced systemic debility. The dosage is strictly regulated to just 1 rati, about 125 milligrams, which is roughly the size of a single mustard seed. You typically take it with an adjuvant like honey or ghee to carry it straight into your cells. And because the drug is so penetrating, the dietary formula during treatment is strictly limited to mung yusha, a light green gram soup, and udon, plain rice, to ensure your body can easily digest it. Oh, and throughout this entire multi-day ritual, the practitioner is required to undergo mental purification. This is a yagya of transformation. It demands fasting and intense focus, because they are essentially synthesizing a spiritual pharmaceutical compound where absolute precision is paramount.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Historical Significance and Conclusion.
When modern scientists and Ayurveda researchers evaluate this specific topic today, the conclusions are honestly staggering. If you go on Google Scholar or PubMed and search keywords like Ayurvedic mechanochemistry, mercuric sulfide nanoparticles, or Bosma characterization, the review articles reveal a massive alignment between these ancient texts and cutting-edge science. From a modern chemistry and toxicology perspective, these highly standardized protocols effectively convert toxic elements into safe, bioavailable organometallic nanostructures. And it wasn't just a one-off text either. Our text is overwhelmingly corroborated by the Rasarnova in Chapter 11, the Rasendra Chudamani by Acharya Samdev in Chapter 5, and the Rasaratnakara. So, what's the key takeaway here? We learned that ancient Indian practitioners possessed a deeply scientific, methodical approach to complex metallurgical transformations, an advanced tradition that predates European alchemical frameworks by centuries. The modern significance is that these texts might actually hold the templates for the future of targeted nanomedicine. Moving forward, the scientific community definitely needs to further research the long-term cellular interactions and exact pharmacokinetics of these specific organometallic compounds.
As we look at modern nanotechnology striving to create targeted, cellular-level medicines today, we really have to ask ourselves, did the ancient alchemists of India intricately map the nanoscale world centuries before we even had the microscopes to see it? On behalf of the Vedmata AI family, it is our humble request that if you found our presentation informative, please share our video as widely as possible so that the authentic knowledge of Indian Vedic texts can reach the masses. Come, let us all participate in this yagya of knowledge. Har Har Mahadev.